chaos at Ibrox as Russell Martin becomes a laughingstock on and off the pitch, humiliated by a question he couldn't even answer. The 49ers are under fire, accused of wrecking Rangers from the top down as calls grow louder to sack the manager for the sake of his own mental health. Tottenham now preparing to recall Mikey Moore in January, with the youngster said to be unhappy under Martin's bizarre tactical demands. And to top it off, there's growing belief that Jayden Meghoma might already be regretting ever joining Rangers. It's crisis after crisis, and you won't believe how deep the cracks really go. Stay locked in. Jaden Meghoma walked through the doors at Ibrox this summer with a head full of dreams, crowds roaring, titles within reach, and a club steeped in history ready to take him in. But 3 months down the line, you've got to wonder what the lad's really thinking. He was one of 13 brought in during what can only be described as a chaotic rebuild, and while some have already started to look out of their depth, Meghoma, just 19 and on loan from Brentford, has actually shown glimmers of real quality. A couple of shaky moments, but when you've got a defense crumbling like a flaky sausage roll in a storm, it's no surprise the young ones take the brunt. Now, a certain journalist, John McGarry, has stirred the pot by suggesting Meghoma might already be regretting his move to Rangers. He reckons the lad must have expected packed houses, regular wins, and the kind of glory you don't find playing academy matches down south. Instead, he's been dropped into the middle of what looks like a structural collapse, with Russell Martin fumbling about like he's still trying to plug in his laptop. But here's the thing, Meghoma isn't the problem. If anything, he's one of the few bright sparks in an otherwise miserable start to the season. He's shown Bottle a willingness to drive forward, and crucially, he looks like he actually wants to wear the shirt. And for all the noise around him, you can see the lad trying to focus, trying to graft, and giving you something to cling to. This Sunday against Livingston, Rangers need him desperately. With the team floundering near the bottom of the table, there's no room for passengers. If the rest had Meghoma's attitude, you might not be sitting here staring at a must-win game before the leaves have even finished falling. If the media think Jayden Meghoma's regretting signing for Rangers, maybe the more important question is this: should we be more worried that it's not him who's the problem, but the club he's walked into? Thursday night under the lights at Ibrox was meant to be a European occasion, but what unfolded was something entirely different, something, according to Derek Ferguson, never seen before inside that famous old ground. A 1-0 defeat to Genk in the Europa League has pushed the Rangers' support beyond breaking point, and Russell Martin now stands right at the center of it all. Boos, banners, chants. You've seen all that before, but when the entire main stand, not just the noisy corners like the Copeland or Broomloan, rise in one voice to demand a manager's head, you're no longer dealing with frustration. You're dealing with outright rejection. And that's exactly what Derek Ferguson witnessed from his seat at Ibrox, removing his headphones as the crowd made their message impossible to ignore. Now, the blame's not just falling on Martin's shoulders, it's reaching the boardroom too. The American investors, the so-called 49ers, are coming under serious fire, not just for hiring Martin, but for refusing to pull the trigger quickly enough now that everything's in freefall. Ferguson went as far as to say it's in the best interest of Martin's mental health to end this nightmare now. 4 wins from 14 matches. It's not just bad, it's historically bad. Of course, some folk tried to blame the referee on the night, but let's be honest, when your team puts in that kind of lifeless, confused display at home in Europe, you've got bigger problems than the man with the whistle, and that's where we are now. Players like Mohamed Diamande look lost. The connection between the manager and the squad doesn't exist, and the fans you've already turned. There's no second act in this story. There's no revival under Russell Martin. Russell Martin stood in front of the press this week and got hit with the kind of question that should have been simple, straightforward even. Name one thing that's improved since you took charge at Rangers. Just one. But instead of answering, he froze, stuttered, dodged, and in doing so, turned himself into a punchline. It's bad enough that Rangers are winless in the league, struggling to find the net and sitting near the foot of the table. It's worse when the man at the helm refuses to take any kind of responsibility, even when the facts are as glaring as Ibrox sitting half empty on European nights. But when that same man shrugs off criticism like he's somehow above it all, that's when it becomes insulting. Hugh Keevins didn't hold back. He called Martin a laughing stock. And frankly, you'd be hard-pressed to argue otherwise. Keevins pointed to the cold stats. Last season, under Philippe Clement and Barry Ferguson, Rangers averaged just over 2 goals per game. Under Martin, barely half a goal per match. Only Aberdeen have scored fewer. And when Dundee are matching your big chances tally, you're not just in a slump, you're in a full-blown crisis. And yet through all this, Martin keeps repeating the same tired line. The team looks good in training. You're no watching training though, are you? You're watching 90 minutes of lost ideas, limp pressing, and a team that couldn't finish a fish supper. The most damning comparison came from Keevins himself. On Sunday, Martin faces David Martindale, an opponent with a past, aye, but one who's rebuilt himself with honesty, grit, and humility. Everything Martin seems to lack right now. There's no clearer contrast. One man clawed his way back from the bottom. The other looks like he still thinks he's the smartest guy in the room, even as the ceiling's caving in. If Martin can't name a single improvement since taking the Rangers job, why in the world should he be allowed to stay in it another week? Well, if you needed another sign that things have gone completely sideways under Russell Martin, here it is. Tottenham are now considering yanking young Mikey Moore out of Ibrox halfway through his loan. And not because he's injured, not because he's homesick, but because he's unhappy, and honestly, who could blame him? The lad arrived with promise, having trained under Thomas Frank and come off a decent year on the fringes at Spurs. But since landing in Glasgow, he's been shoved into a system that doesn't suit him, shuffled across both flanks, and asked to play inside when he's clearly a wide player. It's like asking a fiddler to play the drums. It's not what he's built for. On Thursday night against Genk, Moore finally got a start, only to be subbed off at half-time after Diamande's red card left Martin scrambling. The optics couldn't be worse. This was supposed to be one of England's most exciting young wingers, and here he is, being treated like a passenger. You've got to ask yourself, what's the point of taking a player on loan if you're not going to use him properly? Tottenham certainly seem to be wondering the same, because they're now looking at triggering a January recall clause just to give the boy a chance to go somewhere he can actually play football. And let's be honest, Martin's circus of a tactical system isn't doing anyone any favors, least of all a technically gifted 18-year-old trying to develop at a club that's supposed to be competing, not collapsing. Now, sure, if Martin's shown the door before January, there's a chance things change, and Moore gets a fresh start under a new gaffer. But if not, Spurs will likely pull the plug, and if that happens, it's another black mark on Martin's record. One more talented player who came to Ibrox and walked away worse for it. So here's the real question. If even loan players from England are unhappy and want out, how long before Rangers become the last place any young talent wants to come? If you made it this far, you know something's got to give at Ibrox. So hit that like button, watch yesterday's video if you missed it, and drop this in the comments. Martin's not the answer.